about this scenario that I've put together today, August 12th, the day the assignment is due, 2021. Gerald Sudi speaking. I'm going to be discussing the bipolar disorder with my scenario and setting of an individual, a male. I'll be talking about that in a moment. We'll then discuss the treatment plan, the possible complications, other treatment options, and the Christian worldview in this presentation. The scenario or setting is a middle-aged single white male employee where I work who has had numerous manic incidents in a matter of a week. This employee has worked for the company for more than 20 years. He's worked at least 3 of our locations, and he's had problems everywhere he's worked. But when you transfer to a new plant, no one knows you or knows your history. I've gotten to know him in the last few weeks, and as his manic episodes heightened and escalated, I'm called out. My job is to take care of employees in manic episodes, depression, mental health problems, anxiety. I can be called to medical. I can be called to the floor, grief, bereavement. My job is to get them drugs or alcohol. My job is to get them from the floor to a safe place, to pre-assess, to make decisions, to refer, and to support for whatever they need. So this individual, having been out of control for several days, there were texts and text messages and pictures circulated. People were feeling threatened, and it escalated. I got called out 3 days in a row, and finally management said that's enough. They went to corporate and to the plant doctor, and this man had to be removed from the plant, and they put requirements upon him because several individuals in the manufacturing plant of 5,000 people, maybe 1,500 on his shift, were feeling threatened as well as a management personnel by his comments and by his activity. This required of him, from the head of the corporation, psychiatric leadership and psychiatrists there that worked with our plant, required psychological assessment, a violence assessment, a partial hospitalization program for at least 30 days before they would even consider allowing the employee to return to work. So my job is now to monitor him, to report back to the plant, to work with his treatment center, to get him through this, to make progress, so he can then be returned to work and not lose his job of some 20 years and the retirement and other benefits that he's gained over those 20 years. So we put together the treatment plan. After sitting down with the assessor, I escorted them there, sat with the assessment in the assessment session by the young lady with the DSM-5 on her desk. She went through her questionnaire, very skillfully handled him, and confirmed a bipolar 1 diagnosis. The individual immediately admitted he's been diagnosed before with bipolar 1. So then we put together PHP sessions, partial hospitalization program sessions. She was already aware of this when we arrived because I took her the texts, showed her some of the pictures and the other things that the plant was concerned about. So she felt too that partial hospitalization was required, including medication, private therapy sessions, and group therapy. These sessions would run 4 to 5 hours per day, 5 days per week. After completing the 30-day partial hospitalization program, the next plan was the employee would enter an intensive outpatient program. The outpatient program would not be as many hours per day, 3 hours per day for 3 days per week. Cognitive behavioral therapy would be used as well. When looking for social supports, we found none, no real friends. Because of his behavior and activity, he had acquaintances, but not what would be considered friend. His one friend was basically his father, who's in his 70s and lived in Wisconsin, so he could not be involved in the process, which they would rather have happen. They would rather have some friends or support system outside of the PHP or IOP. And of course, the patient would be under the care of a psychiatrist the entire time while in the PHP and IOP. Possible complications which would be considered and anticipated: one, the employee may resist the plan because he does not agree with it. Clearly that happened. He did not think he needed it, did not know why he was being punished, did not think he had done anything wrong, thought the problem was with the company. It was not his fault. People misunderstood him. He was just joking when he sexually harassed people and threatened them. This was not true, of course, but he intensely resisted the plan. We had to repeat to him over and over again what was happening, why it was happening, and get his agreement to move forward. Of course, there was a medication issue that we anticipated. He was on meds from his present psychiatrist, and the treatment center had their own way to deal with bipolar with the meds that they were suggesting. So that was a possible complication: changing meds or not being able to get his meds, running out of his meds because the other psychiatrist could not see him while he was in the treatment center under a different psychiatrist. Of course, we anticipated a lack of family, social, friend support and involvement that might hinder his progress, and it has, because he has no friends and could not be in regular contact with his dad. His dad was not able to be there, and so I've fast become his friend and talk to him daily by text, email, and or phone on a daily basis to call him back to point, to call him back to what the purpose is, to calm him down, and to build him up when he's discouraged. The employee would have faced additional financial pressures while not working. His weekly schedule was 6 days per week, minimum 49 hours a week, usually 50 and 60 hours a week, because he would like to work 12-hour days. And now, losing that money, which he could not flash, which he did regularly, could not give, could not buy drinks for other people, could lead to further depression, more than mania. And certainly 60% of his 40-hour pay was much different than 60 hours with 20 hours of overtime. So that did become a problem, and we were working through that. His bank account was drained. We had to be able to expedite the disability pay that was coming his way. It's nearly impossible, of course, to reproduce the setting of third shift work on an assembly line as compared to daytime classroom interaction with different people, not assembly line workers, not automobile assemblers. And so different triggers may be revealed, which were things that would trigger him at work were probably got to be triggered in his PHP group therapy settings. Different triggers were revealed, and those are being worked on, but one of my concerns of complications is, what about the triggers that are at work that are only revealed at work and not in a classroom daytime job versus a third shift assembly, manufacturing, grind in a plant? So those are also being dealt with and worked through. So there are possible complications. Next, we move to the matter of other treatment options. There are varying options that could have been played out had we used a different treatment center, because they would handle his situation in a different manner, because they might have had a different style of PHP, a different group therapist that would address different things during the IOP and the PHP that he had to be involved in. We chose not to use the trauma unit or the strongly behavioral unit. We chose to use this particular center. It was closer to his house. He could make it there daily. And we knew the people well and had a good relationship, and they would work with all the requirements that my company psychiatrist was putting upon him. So we chose this center, and he also agreed to that. Of course, medications and different amounts and dosages and types of medication would be a different treatment option somewhere else, and that had to be worked through. And now he's settled and doing okay, but there were changes to his medications. Another thing, if he had severe depression issues, ECT, vagus nerve stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation may be an option that would have been considered. Those were not his major issues, though he did cycle through high mania to some depression, but it was not major depression. He is a people person, so he was loving to be with people at all times, and that would keep him from many of his depressive moods. And as they got him on the new schedule, he was able to stay pretty much above the depression level. But we were concerned about that, and we never hit into that, so that treatment option did not need to be used. However, as we go to the Christian worldview of the bipolar disorder, Christian worldview does not look favorably on this historically. Um, it's considered all kinds of nasty things, from demon possession and a problem and to be locked up. But basically, the Christian worldview includes that activities that this individual has been involved in were totally of the flesh. While at work, though he was working hard, he would be joking, sexual harassment charges, anger would come, job would not be completed. Then it caused other problems with teammates and with the company actually that got him to this point. And then after work, his normal routine would be he would try to work past 6 a.m. to work till the 10 p.m., get extra overtime, so he'd have extra money to go to the bar, to use with the ladies, and which caused problems, but being flashy, spending his money, buying drinks, really kind of buying friends, because men at the places he would visit are not there for relationships with males. They're usually there for other things. So the works of the flesh were a constant 24-hour a day thing for him. Every day to the bar, that was his social place. Then home to sleep and back to work, and back to the bar. If he got off at 6 a.m., he was not often happy because he couldn't go to the bar. It wasn't open at 6 a.m. So he preferred to work till 10 a.m., 12-hour shift, and then go to the bar. Mixing alcohol with his meds was not good either. As a believer, he would want to develop self-control, which would lower his outbursts of anger, his frustration, and his tongue that was getting him in trouble. That's the fruit of the Spirit, that he come to Christ and know the power of the Spirit in his life to transform his heart. Those are real possibilities. I'm still praying and working to that end. So the Christian worldview is to respond to him with compassion, to help to disciple him with disorders, bipolar, fellow believers, and to assist that individual be renewed in the spirit of his mind, knowing that only the truth can set him free from this disorder and grant him real progress. So those are my impressions and my desires as I work through with him. So thank you for listening to the Christian worldview of the bipolar disorder and the scenario that I've put together. This ends my presentation.